What do you do when your wife suddenly gets rich? Divorce her immediately. Hesitate for a second, and you've already lost. The day Candy Hayes became the richest woman in Chicago, I walked away with half her fortune without a backward glance. Her eyes were bloodshot as she grabbed my throat, hissing, "Sonny Miller, you're heartless." After 10 long years, the pig I'd been fattening was finally ready for slaughter. Who could possibly understand this joy? I must be the first man in history to want a divorce because his wife is rich. The reason was simple. I discovered Candy had every intention of cheating on me. She was just one step away from the actual act. After a brief period of shock and heartache, I felt a sense of relief. In truth, I saw this coming 5 years ago, back when her company landed its first round of venture capital and started to explode. They say money corrupts men, but women are no different. Candy would never know that I was standing right outside the study, coffee in hand, the day she and Chloe Reed were discussing her potential affair. "So, Candy, what about Leo Vance from the TV station?" "He's not bad," Chloe said. Candy replied nonchalantly, "He's a little clingy." "And you still gave him a Maserati? Just because you're rich doesn't mean you should throw money around like that." My fingers went stiff, and my heart felt like a hollow drum. A Maserati? That was a serious gift. Then I heard Candy's tired voice. "It's just a car." "Well, I can keep him on the hook for you," Chloe offered. "Who knows? You might change your mind one day." "Whatever," Candy said. The conversation about Leo Vance ended just like that, and they moved on to discussing a joint venture. It was as if it were just two women chatting about trivial romances over afternoon tea. Nothing important. But I drank that coffee, and it kept my eyes wide open until morning. The irony was laughable. When we first got married, we were too broke to even afford a reception. Now, Candy was in the middle of planning a lavish wedding for us. She could feel guilty about our past and simultaneously try to win over another man. The human heart is a mystery, and the depths of wealth are impossible to chart. Divorce. I had to divorce her, and it had to be fast. Any delay could change everything. I met with my lawyer, Mark Evans, at a coffee shop. Coincidentally, the TV in the lobby was playing a financial news show hosted by Leo Vance. I figured that must be how Candy met him. The host was young and charismatic, with an elegant and intelligent way of speaking. He was completely at ease, interviewing the kind of wealthy people most can only dream of meeting. Mark was an old friend from college who had since become a big-shot divorce attorney. Seeing me staring at the screen, he chuckled. "Sonny, you know, that Leo Vance guy looks a bit like you." My temper flared instantly. "Where do you see that?" I snapped. "Leo is a pretty boy, a total softie. I'm a man's man." Mark blinked, confused. "Everyone who knows you says so. People were even talking about it at the last reunion." I scowled and scoffed. How unfortunate for me. I wasn't in the mood to discuss Leo Vance, so I cut to the chase. "I want to divorce Candy." "Sonny, you gotta be kidding me. You're finally on top of the world, and you want a divorce. Do I seem like the kind of guy who jokes about his marriage?" I rolled my eyes. Our whole circle of friends from college witnessed how I married Candy without a second thought, right when her company was on the brink of collapse. I couldn't blame Mark for being shocked. You married her when she was broke and at her lowest, and now you're leaving her when she's at the top. "Sonny, you've certainly got a style all your own." I answered slowly. "Mark, I could handle the poor woman she was back then. But the richest woman in Chicago? Do you really think I can handle that? You've seen enough divorce cases. I thought you, of all people, would get it. Aren't lawyers the ones who best understand the dark and ugly side of human nature, especially divorce lawyers?" Mark was silent for a long moment before he finally asked tentatively, "Candy, did she cheat on you?" "She's one step away. So do something about it. Isn't it a bit harsh to just condemn her like this?" I scoffed. "If I'm not ruthless now, it'll be her turn to be ruthless to me soon enough." "Mark, you tell me, in all the cases you've handled," I said, "do people get a bigger settlement out of love or out of guilt? Once the new flame is officially in the picture, whatever I get will be entirely up to her." I refused to be the one left reacting. Mark was speechless. "Sonny, your calmness is scaring me." Calm? This calm was 5 years in the making. And it wasn't just Leo Vance. Candy's male assistant, Ethan Cole, was always eyeing her like a hawk. I can't remember the exact day, but I went to take Candy to lunch and saw them through her office door, which was slightly ajar. I saw Ethan zipping up the back of Candy's dress. Afterwards, he carefully took a container of warm hangover soup out of his own lunch bag for her. Ethan was always making moves on her, and she always turned him down. But in the lunchbox our driver brought home that day, the hangover soup I had made for her was completely untouched. Even knot I'd tied on the bag was still perfect. A long column of ash from my cigarette fell onto my fingers. Mark looked at me with a sigh. Sonny, I should have my clients come to you for advice. I leaned over, stubbed out my cigarette, and smiled. It wouldn't work. They can't let go, and they can't bring themselves to be ruthless. They can't stand the thought of giving up such an amazing wife to someone else, convinced they're the exception who can manage the situation. They can't be ruthless until everything falls apart and there's no love left. That's why you can't be too greedy. Try to have both the person and the money. That's a recipe for losing everything. I'm different. No one else is like me, constantly planning an exit strategy for my own marriage. Of course, the divorce was happening, but before it did, I had to meet Leo Vance properly as Candy's husband. That evening at dinner, I deliberately put on Leo's show in the background. It was the episode featuring Candy. She touched her cheek. What? You think I looked beautiful that day, too? She was completely composed, not a hint of guilt. I almost started to believe the Maserati was just some toy car. Candy, I've got my eye on a car, I said. She didn't think much of it. Oh, it's rare for you to be interested in cars. Which one? I'll go with you to pick it up. I watched her, perfectly composed. A Maserati Levant. Her smile slowly vanished. She gave me a searching look. I thought you liked Land Rovers. I tapped the table. Fine, a Land Rover it is. As long as it was more expensive than a Maserati, I didn't care. Not long after, I had a run-in with Leo Vance. His Maserati crashed in my Range Rover. I had planned it. Too bad for him. His car couldn't take a hit. Leo stood helplessly by his car, glaring at the front of mine. The crash between two luxury vehicles drew a crowd, and the police arrived quickly. Mr. Vance, the traffic cam shows you made an illegal U-turn. You're at fault here. Leo looked mournfully at the crumpled door, shattered headlights, and bent bumper of his car. Couldn't you have just let me pass? I was ready to take the ticket. Now both our cars are headed to the shop. His eyes were red, putting on a pitiful act as if he were the victim. His entitled attitude even seemed to surprise the cop. A guy in a nearby car couldn't help himself and yelled out, "You're used to people getting out of your way, aren't you? But that's a Range Rover, man. He's not scared of you." Another person shouted. So satisfying. It takes a bigger spell to break a spell. I had seen enough of the spectacle, so I slowly opened my door and stepped out. Leo immediately started laying into me. What were you doing driving so slow? This is a street, not a parking lot. I tried to pass, but you wouldn't let me. Were you trying to block me on purpose? I was in a rush. I had no choice but to gun it, and you. His words died in his throat when he saw my face. The color drained from his. I just smiled. To have such a nice car and still have to rush to work to earn a living. I guess a Maserati doesn't change your destiny after all. Leo gritted his teeth, his face pale, and got back in his car without another word. He just said to the officer, "It's handled, right? I'll pay for the damages." The cop nodded and started directing traffic again. I watched his car drive away, a cold smile on my face. I was in a hurry to get this divorce over with. But I hadn't realized Leo was in an even bigger hurry. Or maybe he was just pissed that I'd wrecked his car. A few days later, a video file arrived, sent from Chloe Reed's phone. It showed a poker game. Candy was leaning close to Leo, gesturing at the cards as if she were a general commanding an army. Leo glanced at her and said in a playful, pleading tone, "Candy, tell me which one to play. My palms are sweating." Candy gave him an indulgent look. "Play whatever you want. If you lose, I'll cover it." The others at the table roared with laughter. As Leo looked down at his hand, his hair kept falling into his eyes. Candy, in a casual and caring gesture, reached over and brushed it aside for him. "Play your best, okay?" she murmured. My hand was shaking as I slammed the phone off and threw it on the bed. A wave of nausea and pain washed over me. I felt unsteady on my feet, the blood rushing to my head. I had to grip the edge of a table just to stay upright. If she had been cheating with anyone other than Leo Vance, I might have been able to let her go peacefully. Shortly after I got the video, Chloe called. She sounded frantic. "Sonny, I'm so sorry. I can't take the video back. I swear I didn't mean to. I wasn't the one who sent it. Please, whatever you do, don't tell Candy." "I know it wasn't you," I said flatly. She breathed a huge sigh of relief. "Don't read too much into it. You know how Candy feels about you. That was just her playing the part for a social thing. I swear, I could cheat 100 times and she never would. So you're trying to make her look as bad as you," I said. She sounded embarrassed. "Yeah, okay, you got me. That was my bad." I hung up, completely disinterested. I didn't believe a word that woman said, but she was right about one thing. As much of a player as Chloe was, she wouldn't have dared to send a video like that to my phone. Only someone like Leo, with his family history of following in his parents' footsteps, would pull a stunt like that. And Chloe's earlier comment about keeping him on the hook for Candy, that just proved she was interested in him herself. She was just holding back out of respect for Candy, not wanting to steal her prize. It wouldn't have been hard for Leo to get his hands on her phone. I called Mark. "How's it going? Can you give me the divorce papers in a week?" "Hey man, I was just giving you some time to cool off," he said. "If I don't have them by tomorrow, I'm finding another lawyer." All right, Fina. It was time to lay my cards on the table with Candy. I walked into the CEO's office and got straight to the point. "Ms. Hayes, I need to ask you for a favor." Candy leaned her elbows on her desk, her fingers laced together, and watched me with a calculating expression. "You're my husband, Sonny. You can ask for anything." I leaned in, a cold smile spreading across my face. "Good. There's something I want." "What is it?" I said, enunciating every word. "The keys to the Maserati Levant." She froze, her expression shifting rapidly. We locked eyes for a few seconds, neither of us backing down, until she finally tried to placate me. "Sonny, it's not important. It wasn't that much money." Her expression screamed that I was being irrational. "You've never been this petty before." I didn't have the energy to argue. "Ms. Hayes, can you get it back?" Candy's eyes were locked on mine, as if she was trying to figure out how much I meant it. I stared right back, not giving an inch. She clenched her jaw, rubbed her forehead, and finally relented. "Fina, you'll have them tomorrow." This was the first time I had ever publicly disrespected Candy like that. But it didn't matter. I had achieved my goal. "Thank you," I said with a slight smile, then turned and walked out without another word. Just as my hand closed around the doorknob, I heard Candy's voice behind me. "Sonny, are you jealous?" I answered without turning around. "You can think that if you want." As I closed the door behind me, I heard the sound of objects being swept off a desk and crashing to the floor. It was followed by the sharp crack of a fist slamming down. Outside, her assistant Ethan Cole stared at me in shock. I just gave him a small smile and stepped into the elevator. This was for the best. Once you've made a decision, there's no point in beating around the bush. With the Maserati keys in my pocket, I went straight to the television station and asked for Leo Vance. He was late to meet me at the cafe downstairs, and he looked terrible. I guess having a gift like that taken away doesn't feel too good. "Mr. Vance, please, have a seat," I said, gesturing to the chair. His eyes landed on the car keys sitting next to my coffee cup, and his pupils constricted. He then dropped into the chair across from me and sneered. "Are you here to gloat, Mr. Miller?" He brushed his hair out of his eyes, his expression defiant. "Yes," Ms. Hayes asked for the keys back. But when a woman in her position takes back a gift, you know she's going to offer something even better as compensation. I just looked at him calmly. Of course I knew that. It was simple logic, but I didn't care. "Besides," he added, "what you did was really embarrassing for Candy." I waited for him to finish, then slowly pushed the car keys across the table toward him. "Her reputation isn't my concern. Mr. Vance, a Maserati isn't something I'd bother showing off." I took it back because I paused, and he watched me with a guarded expression. I let out a soft laugh. "I just wanted to be the one to give it to you personally." His eyes snapped to mine. "What are you talking about?" I spoke slowly and deliberately. "If you want it, I can give it to you, but you can't take it from me. Do you understand, my dear little brother?" The color drained from his face instantly. The coffee cup in his hand trembled, spilling onto the saucer, and he quickly set it down. I folded my arms and watched him with a cold smile. I felt like a cornered animal, all my defenses on high alert. "That's right. Leo Vance was my half-brother. We hadn't seen each other in 20 years. That's why we were both pretending to be strangers. The truth is, the moment I first heard the name Leo Vance, I knew it was him. And at the car crash, he obviously recognized me immediately too. His target was Candy, so of course he would have done his research on me. He was just playing it cool, choosing not to reveal our connection until he had secured his position. Knowing my stepmother and the way she raised him, once he got what he wanted, Leo would put on a pitiful act and say, "Brother, I'm so sorry. I had no idea Candy was my sister-in-law." There was no way I was going to let that happen. I could accept the divorce, but letting Leo get anywhere near Candy would be a personal failure. Did he think he could pull the same stunt on me that his mother, Laura, pulled on my mom all those years ago? Not a chance. Thanks to him and his mother, I learned one thing very early in life. Never give anyone the chance to catch you off guard. "I will divorce her," I said, "but you will never be Candy's husband. That will be one of my conditions." I watched with a cold smile as the color drained completely from Leo's face. I continued my taunt. "Of course, you could always be your secret lover, get a little allowance from Candy." But I imagine Laura would be very disappointed in that. Laura always had such high hopes for you, hoping you'd be even more successful than her. You two wouldn't be satisfied with you just being a mistress, would you? Any flicker of hope in his eyes was instantly extinguished by my words. He bit his lip, his voice trembling. "Brother, do you really hate me this much?" I was just a kid back then. I was innocent. I watched his performance with cold detachment as he tried to appeal to my emotions. "Dad has felt so guilty about you all these years. He just could never find you," he said. "I don't know what to say about what happened between my mom and yours, but we're different. We're brothers." I remained unmoved. "Leo, save the act," I said with a sneer. "I've already lost once in my life." That was enough. His expression changed, realizing I wasn't buying it, and he dropped the performance. "Candy told me your marriage hasn't been happy for years," he said. "That you're the one who's unsatisfied, and that being with you is exhausting for her." "You're right," I shot back, "but you've missed your chance." I stood up tall, ending the conversation, and walked out. Leo yelled after me, "Brother, even if all I did was get you to divorce her, it's still a win for me. Don't give yourself so much credit," I called back. "You were just the catalyst." I tossed the words over my shoulder and left without looking back. When I got home, I started giving Candy the silent treatment. First, I was furious. Of all the people in the world, she had to get involved with my stepmother's son. Second, if we were getting a divorce, I couldn't keep up the loving husband act. I had to start showing the cracks. When the wedding planner called to discuss the arrangements, I told her to put everything on hold, that I'd be in touch if I had any new ideas. A wedding that was past its prime? Whoever wanted it could have it. That night, I had a nightmare. I was 3 years old again, and my name was still Sonny Vance. Leo's mother, Laura, was my father's secretary, and she was determined to marry up. I remember the day she stormed into our house, pregnant, waving an ultrasound report in the air. She announced she was having a boy, and that a Vance heir couldn't be born out of wedlock. She was arrogant, leveraging her pregnancy for status. My mother, despite having me, was just a housewife. She was no match for a cunning, ambitious woman from the office. My father treated that ultrasound report like it was the most precious thing in the world. He felt no shame. He told Laura to be careful and not risk the pregnancy, and then he told my mother to get out. My mom was so upset she fainted. In the end, my grandmother had to step in and restore some order. She wasn't easily fooled like my father. She managed to calm Laura down while also reassuring my mother. "Honey," she told my mom, "all men with money fool around. Those women are shameless. But you gave birth to Sonny. No one can take that away from you." To be fair, my grandmother was always good to me, her first grandson. Her words seemed to sway my mother. The main issue was that my mom hadn't worked in years. She had dedicated her entire life to my father and our family. She was terrified that if they divorced, she wouldn't get custody of me. But Laura's good behavior didn't last long. After my grandmother passed away, she became completely unrestrained. She told everyone she was carrying my father's child, exploiting his weakness. She got more and more involved in his life and business. She started acting like the company was hers and convinced my father to start transferring assets. She claimed it was for their son's future. Any money given to my mother would just go to another family when she eventually remarried. Laura completely brainwashed him, and in the end, he divorced my mother. The result was that my mother left with nothing. She couldn't even take me with her because she had no income. Custody was automatically granted to the Vance family. 4 or 5 years, from the age of 3 to 8. Laura became my lifelong nightmare. I was treated worse than a servant in that house. After Laura gave birth to Leo, she lost her figure. My father went back to his old ways, chasing women all day. This only made my life worse. Laura took out all her frustrations with him on me. She would beat me, scream at me, and lock me in my room for days. Because of that traumatic childhood, I never thought I would get married. Then I met Candy. Now, Leo Vance thinks he can repeat history. Did he ask for my permission? I will not end up like my mother, left with absolutely nothing. When Candy heard I had canceled the wedding, she came to find me and demand an explanation. I simply handed her the divorce papers. Let's get a divorce. She shot to her feet. Sonny, are you insane? I looked at her calmly. You know I'm not. Haven't you known for years that this was on my mind? Her chest was rising and falling rapidly. She put her hands on her hips and paced the room. Why? Is this because of Leo? Stop being ridiculous. I know he's my brother-in-law. I threw the papers in her face. You don't know a damn thing. If you really knew, you never would have done it. My voice was a distorted, trembling roar. Candy, how did I not see it? All this money has made you so arrogant. What the hell were you thinking? The edge of the paper left a thin red scratch on her cheek. She just stared at me, stunned. She clearly hadn't expected such a violent reaction from me. After a long moment, she walked over and held me tightly. Sonny, I just wanted you to reconcile with your family. I was still debating whether it was the right thing to do when you found out. In that moment, all my defenses crumbled. A wave of intense grief and anger washed over me, and tears streamed down my face, falling silently onto the shoulder of her blazer. Candy, you don't understand anything, I whispered. I do know. You started seeing a therapist 5 years ago. I know everything, Sonny, Candy said, gripping my shoulders, her voice tight with pain. I mumbled, Candy, what gives you the right? Have you ever felt my pain? What right do you have to play savior? That family, I wish they were all dead. And I'm not their only victim. You are too. What right do you have to force me to reconcile with them? Do they deserve it? Candy wiped the tears from my face. Sonny, believe me, I never betrayed you. I gave Leo the car because Chloe wanted to go after him. And you know what a player she is. But he's still your brother, she started. I shoved her away. I didn't want to get into whether she only saw him as a brother-in-law. Leo's ambition was plain to see. It doesn't matter anymore, Candy. Just sign the papers. We promised each other when we got married that if this relationship ever made one of us unhappy, we would let the other go. Sonny, she cried, exasperated. I was tired of it all. I know the company is at a critical point. We don't have to split the assets. I'll just take my shares. And one more thing. Ms. Hayes' next husband cannot be Leo Vance. Those are my terms. Sonny Miller. Do you think that's fair? Candy screamed, throwing the papers aside and cornering me. Her eyes were bloodshot as she slammed me against the wall, her hands tight around my neck. What did I do to deserve this? Why are you being so heartless? Candy, I don't want to test human nature. One day, you'll thank me for this. She stared at me for a long moment, then buried her face in my chest, her voice a wounded whisper. Sonny, does it really have to be this way? Please, Miss Hayes, grant my request, I said. She glared at me. I met her gaze without flinching. Then she shoved me away, turned her back, and signed the papers with a few angry strokes of the pen, never looking at me again. You're really something else, Sonny Miller. The day the paperwork was finalized, I went to my mom's for dinner. We've been inseparable ever since she got a job and won custody of me when I was 8. She never remarried, all for my sake. When she saw me show up alone, she playfully scolded me for not bringing Candy. I knew if I told her about the divorce right then, dinner would be ruined. So I just said Candy had a work event. My mom nodded, then started in on us about having a baby. She grabbed my hand, her voice full of concern. Sonny, is it Candy? Is she the one who doesn't want kids? She used to say it wasn't the right time, but she can't use that excuse anymore. Seeing my mom so anxious and insecure, it hit me. If I stayed married to Candy, I would probably end up just like her. Insecure. desperate, clinging to the idea of a child as a life raft. Neither of us said no, but neither of us said yes. I replied vaguely. We're just letting it happen naturally. Thinking back, in all our years of marriage, Candy and I had only discussed having children one time. Just once. It was in our tiny, rundown apartment. She held me, her voice strained. Sonny, I promised I would be the perfect wife for you. I don't have time for a baby right now. Even if I did, I'd have no time to raise it, and the burden would fall on you. I can't do that to you. I thought about it and nodded. I understood. She was so young back then. She looked at me, embarrassed, and rubbed her nose. And if my startup fails, she'd said, at least you'll still have options. I was so mad I could have spit. I grabbed her by the ear. Oh, really, Candy? Who was it that promised for better or for worse? Failure? You're already at rock bottom. Maybe I should make another choice right now. She immediately surrendered. No, Sonny. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Then she kissed me passionately. You know what I mean? I can handle anything, but I can't stand to see you suffer. I held her, laughing through my tears. I'm not suffering. I won't be the forgotten husband left behind. Even when you're a huge success, I won't feel wronged. She nodded seriously. That's my man. But in the end, she did make me feel wronged. The first time the thought of divorce ever crossed my mind was 5 years ago, because of Candy's business partner. Their company had just started to take off after landing a huge round of venture capital. They went from struggling to wealthy almost overnight. The partner was the first to get restless. She started an affair with a younger man and was desperate to cash out her shares and live the high life. Because our wives were partners, her husband, Mr. Davis, and I got along quite well. In those early startup years, Mr. Davis saw that I wasn't working at the company, but was hosting a light entertainment show on the radio instead. He used to joke with me, Sonny, my friend, you're so laid back. Their company is desperate for help, you know. I'd always decline. My wife is a force of nature. The best thing I can do is stay out of her way. Aren't you worried, he'd say, that when the company gets huge, Candy will forget everything you did for her? He urged me to get more involved, to establish my presence. That way, my position as the man of the house would be secure. I would just shrug it off. I didn't mind when she was poor, and I won't be groveling now that she's rich. And I truly meant it. My childhood had given me a deep-seated aversion to the role of the self-sacrificing partner, the one who gives everything and ends up with nothing. I lost my faith in marriage a long time ago. If it hadn't been for Candy, I never would have gotten married at all. Besides, I told him, not pressuring her, not nagging her, not demanding children, just letting her fly as high as she can. Isn't that the best support I can give? Candy never needed a man's help to succeed. She was brilliant on her own. Mr. Davis would just shake his head at me and say, with the air of a man who'd seen it all, Sonny, my boy, you're too young. You don't get it yet, but you will. I would just smile and say nothing. I knew that in a marriage, the only person who can give you security is yourself. I just wanted to make sure that when the day came for a divorce, I would have fewer regrets and less resentment. These were the hard lessons I learned from what happened with Laura and my mother. Back then, I wasn't actually thinking about divorce. Not until Mr. Davis's wife and her affair became the talk of the town. She and Mr. Davis, a couple who had built everything together, ended up facing each other in court. Her young lover, just like Laura before him, didn't want his benefactor to lose any of her wealth. The two of them had been scheming against Mr. Davis for a long time. First, she liquidated her shares in the company, and then her next business venture conveniently failed. Candy's partner begged her to mediate. Candy told me, frustrated, that it was a clear case of hiding marital assets. Mr. Davis had reacted far too late. The truth was, the warning signs of her affair had been there for a while. He was just too busy with the company, always on the go, and he'd forgotten how dangerous a woman can be. Candy and I went to the courthouse on the day of the verdict. We listened as Mr. Davis gave a heart-wrenching testimony about how much he had sacrificed for her. He called her ungrateful and ruthless, but it was no use. His words weren't evidence. They gave him no legal advantage. The woman who no longer loved him gave him just enough to make him go away, a pittance that slipped through her fingers. After the hearing, he came to say goodbye, looking completely broken. He could barely look me in the eye. Sonny, he said, don't be like me. Get out while she still loves you. Don't wait until all the guilt is gone and all that's left is calculation. He took his meager settlement and was never seen in Chicago again. Meanwhile, his ex-wife and her handsome boy toy started their new life together. I was in a funk for weeks after that, completely withdrawn. Candy managed to clear her schedule and took me on a trip overseas. On the plane, we had a long talk. "Sonny," she said, "we both knew her heart wasn't in it with Mr. Davis anymore, didn't we? So you think what she did was justified?" I asked. Candy rubbed her temples wearily. "Sonny, that's not what I'm saying. It's just that we can't judge affairs of the heart. And everything she did with her assets was perfectly legal." I knew then that Candy had fully transformed into a sharp, pragmatic businesswoman. "Sonny, what are you so worried about? Are you afraid I'll end up like her?" she asked, playfully pinching my cheek as the plane was landing. I played along. "Yeah, I'm afraid you'll stop loving me and leave me without a dime." She snuggled closer, her voice a low laugh. "Never, honey. Did she mean she'd never stop loving me, or she'd never leave me penniless?" I didn't ask. Instead, I said petulantly, "Fine, then I'll leave you when you love me the most. I'll take your love and your money with me." Candy looked at me with adoration. "Okay," she said, "it's all yours. So can you please stop being sad now?" "Deal," I said, my voice bright again. In that moment, I decided that if that day ever came, I would be the one to walk away first. And I finally did it. By the time I finished my trip down memory lane, dinner was over. I was ready to tell my mom about the divorce. As she got up to clear the plates, she looked at me with that familiar, disappointed expression. "You never listen, and now you're paying the price. You really need to have a child, and soon." "Mom, when he made it big, having me didn't exactly benefit you, did it?" My mom's face went white, her lips trembling. "You?" My fingers trembled. "Mom, I'm sorry," I said softly. She stared at me for a long moment, then wiped a tear from her eye. "No, I'm the one who should be sorry. As long as you know what you're doing, that's all that matters." I knew, better than anyone. "Mom, I'm divorced," I said, pulling out the papers. "You don't have to worry about any of that anymore." My mom stared at me in shock, then snatched the certificate from my hand. She swayed on her feet, then pointed a finger at me. "Sonny, are you trying to give me a heart attack? A divorce? You've really done it now. Candy spoils you rotten, and you think you can do whatever you want." I gave a hollow laugh. "Mom, if I wait until she stops spoiling me, it'll be too late." My mom let out a cry of despair, clutching her chest. I poured myself a glass of wine. "What are you crying about? I'm luckier than you were. She gave me half of everything. And you're satisfied with that?" she demanded. "Yes," I said. "I'm very satisfied." Mark was satisfied too. My case had already become a legendary part of his portfolio. I was sure that once the story hit the news, his rates would skyrocket. My mom looked at me with deep regret. "Can't you two really start over?" I knew how much she had always liked Candy, but she could never understand that a woman at the pinnacle of success often can't see the person standing right next to her. "Mom, you know what? I've been sleeping so much better since the divorce." Something seemed to click for her then. Tears streamed down her face as she pulled me into a tight hug. "Sonny, it's my fault. What happened back then, it made you lose faith in marriage." I try to lighten the mood. "Mom, it's not about that. It's just that I've seen too much of this wealthy lifestyle these past few years. It's either rich wives taking young lovers and their husbands ending up miserable like Mr. Davis, or it's couples who silently agree to lead separate lives, despising each other while sharing a bed. There were no other endings." My mom held me, crying. "Sonny, Candy isn't like that. Can't you just trust her?" I shook my head. "Mom, do you really think being the richest woman in Chicago is Candy's finish line? It's not. I believed in Candy's talent, her drive, and her ambition more than anyone. Her future was so bright, I couldn't even bear to look at it. My childhood affected me, yes, but in a way, I'm grateful to my mom. Because of her tragedy, I learned to protect myself in relationships, to never give everything I have. I would never allow myself to become the husband left behind. In 10 years of marriage, Candy never made me suffer. I never wanted for anything. And now, the shares I have are enough to let me live comfortably for the rest of my life. Nothing gives you a greater sense of security than money. I no longer had to play the part of CEO Hayes' husband. I packed a bag and took off for a vacation overseas. I was sunbathing on a beautiful beach when, of all people, my deadbeat father called. Sonny, I heard you got divorced. Why don't you come work at my company? I'm getting old, and it's going to belong to you and your brother one day anyway. I let out a sarcastic laugh. Mr. Vance, are you losing your mind? Hasn't the Vance family business been failing for years? Otherwise, a certain someone wouldn't have been so ecstatic over a single Maserati he had to beg for. I heard a violent coughing fit on the other end, and then Laura got on the line. Sonny Miller, don't you get too comfortable. Sooner or later, my son will win Candy over. She'll marry Leo. Laura, you're as shameless as ever, I said. I could hear my father yelling in the background. You classless woman, get out of here. Two brothers fighting over the same woman? Have you no shame? Leo will not marry Candy Hayes. Are you crazy, old man? Laura shrieked back. Do you have any idea who Candy Hayes is? If it weren't for her, your pathetic company would have gone bankrupt years ago. I don't care who she is. A woman like that isn't good enough for my son. Oh, so you have standards now, do you? What about back then when... I just sneered and hung up. What a mess. My father's precious son, born from an affair, was now trying to start one of his own. And now, suddenly, he remembers he has another son. I put the whole toxic family on my mind. I was having such a good time, I'd completely forgotten about home, and then my mom called. Son, Mr. Vance sent over some documents. They look like asset transfer forms. Oh, I said, is he dying? My mom sighed. Maybe he's just getting old and feeling guilty. I scoffed. Tell him he couldn't earn in a lifetime what I got in my divorce settlement. Not everyone is as cheap with their first wife as he was. My mom mumbled, you're right. He's judging Candy by his own low standards. I was about to hang up when she added, oh, by the way, Candy has been coming over for dinner every day. If she has a work thing, she even has someone call to let me know. I just said, oh, she comes over more often now than when you two were married. And there's no gossip about her in the papers. I was getting annoyed. Mom, you don't have to report all this to me. And you don't have to host her anymore. I ended up just turning my phone off to avoid any more of those calls. When I got back to the States, my good friend Kevin Baker was organizing a college reunion and insisted I had to be there. I had no choice but to go. Reunions are always breeding grounds for gossip. As Mark and I approached the room, we could already hear Frank Doyle's loud mouth. I knew Candy and Sonny would get divorced. Who doesn't get corrupted by that much money? Sonny must be kicking himself now, Frank went on. He stuck with her through the lean years for nothing. He should have chosen Ava Bennett back in the day. Another classmate started teasing him. Frank, that's just sour grapes, someone said. Haven't you seen the news? Candy's settlement is the biggest in the country's history. Exactly. He's richer than any of us now. And don't forget, Ava is still single. Frank wasn't convinced. She must have done something wrong, and Sonny caught her. He might have gotten a huge payout, but I bet he's crying himself to sleep at night. Yeah, well, at least he's crying in a mansion where the wind and rain can't touch him. Someone retorted. Frank, you should just worry about yourself. I listened from the doorway for a bit, then gave Mark a wry smile. Reunions are always fun, I said. Mark smiled awkwardly. Come on, let's go in. It's just Frank being Frank. It's not easy to get everyone together for these things. You're kind of the main attraction. Spoken like a true lawyer. He was right. Without my notorious divorce, the turnout probably wouldn't have been as high. I honestly hadn't realized my divorce had become national news. Kevin Baker rushed over and slapped me on the back. What are you two doing out here? Get in. The room went dead silent. Then one by one, people started getting up to greet us. Frank stood in the back, biting his lip. Kevin had been our class president and was the one who organized the reunion. He clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. All right, everyone, tonight we're going all out. Top shelf everything. And the richest person here is paying. He threw an arm around my shoulder and gave me a pointed look. The room erupted in applause and cheers. I just smiled. My pleasure. Everyone, order whatever you want. Mark gave me a high five. That's my boy, Sonny. All right, everyone, you heard the man. Halfway through the dinner, Kevin, a little drunk, said, I was going to organize a bigger alumni event, invite everyone, but then I decided against it. I just lowered my gaze and smiled faintly. If Candy and I hadn't divorced, a big alumni event would have been possible. Both Candy and Ava were 2 years behind us in school. It would have been too awkward to have them all in the same room. One of the guys raised his glass to me, his face a mixture of envy and awe. You know, in our whole class, the person I respect most is Sonny. He married Candy when the Hayes family was going bankrupt, and he left her right after she became the richest woman in the country. Who else has guts like that? Everyone laughed and applauded. Well said. What a power move. That's Sonny for you. Always doing his own thing. Even Frank raised his glass to me. I wasn't really interested and didn't respond. Seeing my expression darken, Kevin stood up and clapped his hands to change the subject. All right, everyone. This is a reunion, not the Let's Analyze Sonny's Life show. Come on, let's hear what everyone else has been up to for the last 10 years. Mark stood up too. Yeah, we can't let Sonny have all the fun. After that, the party finally got back on track. The mood was great, and I had more than a few drinks myself. Just as things were winding down, there was a knock at the door, and a server showed someone in. Kevin, how could you? A party in Chicago, and you don't invite me? I guess I'll have to pick up the tab. It was Candy, looking radiant. Kevin shot me a look that was pure innocence. Candy, you're so busy. I was afraid you wouldn't have time. The whole room broke into knowing laughter. Candy sat down, completely at ease, and said with a self-deprecating smile, well, I have to make time. Otherwise, my husband might really leave me for good. Every eye in the room turned to me. I was utterly speechless. Was she implying she wanted to get back together? We had signed the papers. She couldn't just ignore that. Kevin, sensing my discomfort, quickly changed the subject. So, Sonny, now that you're a man of leisure, what kind of woman are you looking for? I rubbed my chin, pretending to think. Probably a confident, sexy, older woman. Candy's face instantly fell. Later that night, I was at Dr. Ava Bennett's office for my session, and she asked me the same question. Sonny, you have your whole life ahead of you. Have you thought about what kind of partner you see yourself with in the future? I tilted my head. Probably someone like Candy when she was younger. Ava rubbed her nose and gave a sad smile. You really know how to shoot a girl down. I patted her hand gently. Ava, I'm being honest. You know that. For me, Sonny Miller, falling in love with Candy took every ounce of courage I had. As my therapist for the past 5 years, Ava understood that better than anyone. Even though the ethics of her profession forbade a relationship, I needed to make it clear it was never going to happen. She let out a long sigh and stood up. Come on, I'll walk you out. When we got to the parking garage, I stopped. Ava, you need to move on. I wasn't the man she should be waiting for. I had told her the same thing 10 years ago when I turned her down. Ava's hands fell to her sides as she looked at me in the dim light of the garage. I looked back at her. Suddenly, a pair of bright headlights washed over us. A car door slammed, and Candy strode toward us. Sonny, found a replacement already. Her voice was laced with ice. Candy gritted her teeth and yanked me behind her. Then, she slapped Ava hard across the face. Ava let out a small cry and stumbled backward. I rushed forward and grabbed Candy's arm. Candy, what are you doing? You can't just hit people. I instantly regretted the whole situation. I never thought Candy would actually resort to violence. Candy's chest was heaving. She held onto my arm and glared at Ava. She deserved it. You. I was so angry I clenched my fists, at a loss for how to explain. Then Candy turned her fury back to Ava. Was it fun, Ava? Was it fun playing games with me? Ava, holding her cheek, let out a strange, choked laugh, her shoulders shaking. I might have been playing you a little, Ava admitted, but I warned you, didn't I? It was a risky move. Not everyone can rise from the ashes. I slowly calmed down, my eyes darting between the two women facing off. Well, had Candy started talking to Ava? And what game had Ava been playing? Candy dragged me down to the riverfront. She pushed her wind-blown hair out of her face and looked at me, her voice soft. Ava told me you had deep-seated psychological trauma. She said that the only way you could ever fully trust me and trust our marriage was if you reconciled with your family. Right around then, Leo's show invited me on as a guest, so I thought I'd try to make contact. Chloe was also chasing him at the time, and I was worried she was just going to play with your brother and break his heart, so I pretended to be close with him. But now I realize Ava was lying to me. You could never forgive them. All I did was push you further away. So that was the real story behind the whole thing with Leo. Candy had known all along that there were problems in our marriage. Sonny, they don't matter. I just want to be with you. Do you understand? Seeing Candy looking so full of regret, I almost wanted to laugh. Ava really did have a way with words. That sounded exactly like something she would say, and she had managed to completely manipulate the brilliant Candy Hayes. But what did knowing the truth change? I still didn't regret the divorce. Candy, I said coldly, thank you for telling me all this. But we don't have a future together. Candy looked shocked, then furious. She grabbed my arm. Sonny, was I not clear enough? Do you want me to call Leo right now, so you can hear from him? Her voice broke. Or is it because I have too much money? Is that it? I'll file for bankruptcy. Don't be ridiculous. I snapped. I can't take that risk. Candy, it's not that I don't trust you. I don't trust human nature. Don't you get it? The road ahead for Candy was paved with gold, and I had seen too many cautionary tales of where that road leads. Look at the first wives of all those famous billionaires. Did any of them have a happy ending? Even their children suffered. It's always the second and third wives, the ones who come later, who get to enjoy the good life. But there was no point in arguing about it with Candy. To her, those were just stories that wouldn't apply to us. But I was sticking to my new motto, look out for yourself and stay free. I took a deep breath. I'm genuinely happy right now, Candy. Please, just let me go. She looked at me, incredulous, her body trembling. Sonny, is the thought of getting back together with me that painful for you? I met her gaze directly. For the last 5 years, I haven't been happy for a single day. Candy was left speechless. We parted ways, with nothing resolved. I saw the disappointment on her face. She clearly thought her explanation would fix everything. But I was done compromising my own happiness for a marriage. I thought I had made that perfectly clear. But I forgot that Candy Hayes doesn't give up easily. When she got nowhere with me, she started working on my mom. Suddenly, my mom was showing up at my apartment all the time, cooking for me and acting as Candy's official spokesperson. Was she afraid I'd use my free time to find that confident, sexy woman I joked about? Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. Mom, I said, my head throbbing, haven't you been a little over-involved lately? Her eyes widened, and she looked a little sheepish. Oh, do you think I look younger? Candy got me a spa package and a gym membership, and she signed me up for a bunch of classes. It's been so much fun. So, her world had opened up, and her mindset had changed with it. This was the woman who used to be more insecure than me, constantly talking about how a baby would save a marriage. Now she was a new person. Candy's methods were certainly effective. I left the apartment and called Mark to get dinner, just to get away. After hearing me complain, Mark hit the nail on the head. Ms. Hayes is trying to use your mom to inspire you. It's a thoughtful strategy. Sonny, are you telling me you're not even a little bit tempted? He asked, his eyes gleaming with gossip. I shook my head firmly. Not in the slightest. It was just frustrating. It seemed like there was no perfect way to end a marriage. Either you tear each other to shreds and become strangers, or you do what we did and cut your losses while there's still some affection left. But one person is always left wanting more. So, after thinking it over, I called Candy. I decided to try and reason with her in a language she would understand. Candy, let's look at us getting back together as a major investment. From my perspective, the risk assessment doesn't pass. It's not a venture I'm willing to take a chance on. She was silent on the other end of the line for a long time. She clearly hadn't expected that. Sonny, do you really have to frame our relationship in those terms? Can't you just trust me for once? Candy, just because I'm not backing this project doesn't mean it won't succeed. But I'm prepared to live with my decision. I said calmly. Candy and I could never go back to the way things were. The moment I took that final step toward divorce, I knew that more clearly than anything. Candy let out a cold laugh. Sonny, I can tell you put a lot of thought into how to convince me to give up. I had no response to that. Before I hung up, I added, you were incredibly gracious and respectful during the divorce. I won't try to stop you from doing whatever you want now. But Candy, for your own sake, I hope you can move on soon. My mom was leaning against my doorway, looking sad and helpless. Sonny, you're so logical, so cold. You're not giving her any hope at all. I replied quietly, maybe I never should have gotten married in the first place. I just didn't realize it sooner. I'm not cut out for the responsibilities of marriage. A while later, Candy appeared on Leo's show again. Unlike the power suit she wore last time, she was much slimmer now and was wearing a sexy, curve-hugging dress. Kevin called me to tease me about it. Sonny, Candy's got a great body. I never noticed under all those business suits. You don't think she's actually worried about you finding that confident, sexy woman, do you? I didn't say anything. The story of Candy Hayes pursuing her ex-husband was old news in Chicago. It was a standoff, a question of who would give in first. Or more accurately, it was Candy refusing to let me go. Leo seemed much less relaxed during this interview, almost nervous. Ms. Hayes, you're looking very feminine tonight. Candy's reply was cool and self-mocking. Not really. I just wore this to show a certain someone that my figure isn't so bad either. Leo forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Well, then congratulations are in order, Ms. Hayes. On your new relationship. I'll take that as a good omen, Candy replied flatly. Her short, indifferent answers left Leo scrambling to keep the conversation going more than once. My mom put on her reading glasses to watch more closely. When it was over, she turned to me. Do you think she went on that show just to get back at him for you? I rolled my eyes. Mom, don't you have a beauty routine to attend to? Go get some sleep. She stood up and stretched. I'm getting old. I just don't understand you kids anymore. Before she went to her room, I walked over and looked at her seriously. Thank you, Mom, I said, and I meant it. Seeing you so happy now, it makes me really happy too. She patted my shoulder. Sonny, it's time for me to live for myself too. I'd like you to meet someone soon. I was thrilled. Really, for once my mom looked shy. We've known each other for a little while. We met at the gym. I was nervous about telling you. Don't be silly. I'm thrilled, I said, and I truly was. Just before she went to bed, she couldn't help herself. Sonny, I've started a new chapter. I'm not afraid of the future. Won't you give Candy another chance? I took a deep breath. Mom, you don't need to feel guilty. I promise you, if what happened when I was a kid had any effect on me, it's a positive one now. It's not a burden anymore. Please believe me, I'm perfectly fine on my own. Right now, I am truly, genuinely happy. So happy that I don't want any other option. The buzz around Chicago's richest woman and her record-breaking divorce settlement hadn't even died down when she made headlines again by publicly declaring her love for her ex-husband. Even Kevin was making jokes about us on his late-night show. My God, he joked, is Sonny Miller the only single man left in Chicago? It was ridiculous. One day, leaving the studio after my show, I found Ethan Cole waiting for me in the parking garage. I rolled down my window, and he respectfully handed me a folder. Mr. Miller, these are the materials for the upcoming supplier bidding conference. Ms. Hayes was hoping you would preside over the meeting. I took it and glanced through the pages. I wasn't surprised to see Vance Foods on the list of bidders. It was the small food company my father, Mr. Vance Sr., had run for decades. The company that had once made him successful enough to abandon his wife and child. To think that one day he'd be coming to me, begging for a contract. I had to admit, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Ethan added, Mr. Miller, don't worry. The head of procurement will be there to assist you with everything. I nodded, accepting Candy's gesture of goodwill. As long as she didn't bring up getting back together, I would stick to my promise not to interfere in her life. Besides, I was actually looking forward to this meeting with the Vance family. I tossed the folder onto the passenger seat and looked at Ethan. You're looking well, Ethan. Any good news? He looked a bit shy, then pulled an invitation out of his briefcase. I'm getting married next month, Mr. Miller. I'd be honored if you would come. I stared at him for a long moment. Under my gaze, beads of sweat started to form on his brow, and he kept his eyes lowered. Mr. Miller, if I've ever been out of line in the past, I hope you can forgive me, he said quietly. I just grunted. I'm no saint. The old Ethan had definitely rubbed me the wrong way, and I didn't feel the need to pretend otherwise. But this invitation was his real reason for being here. A CEO's assistant wouldn't need to wait in a parking garage just to invite me to a company meeting. It seemed Candy had gotten very clever, systematically addressing every person and incident that had ever caused me grief. I wasn't unmoved by the gesture, but that's all it was. As the two largest shareholders, it was good for the company that we could put our personal issues aside. At the supplier conference, I took my seat at the head of the table. It wasn't just because of Candy. I owned half the company. I had every right to be there. The entire Vance family, all three of them, were in attendance. Just as Laura had screamed over the phone, without Candy's help, Vance Foods would have been bankrupt long ago. As soon as the meeting was over, the Vances invited me to dinner. I had just taken my seat when Candy arrived and sat down next to me. "Sonny," she whispered, "did the meeting go okay?" I was so busy today, I didn't get a chance to check. She completely ignored the three Vances, who had stood up to greet her and were now frozen in awkward silence. I had a fight to keep from smiling. "It was fine," I said. "I had a great time." Leo coughed into his fist and sat back down, looking uncomfortable. Laura's face was a mask of fury. "Sonny, Ms. Hayes," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You two are divorced, but you're still so close." Laura couldn't contain herself any longer, adopting a condescending tone. I didn't bother to respond. Kenny just glanced at her. "Thanks for your concern. We just did it for fun." I let out a cold laugh. We were the original couple. Even divorced, we have dignity. Unlike some people who sleep their way to the top, only to end up in a miserable marriage. And their children learn to follow their wonderful example. Laura was so furious her face was twisted in a snarl, her lips trembling. She jumped to her feet, pointing a shaking finger at us. "Candy, Sonny, you too." Candy's expression turned to ice. Leo quickly stood up, raising his glass. "Candy, I want to thank you for all your support for my family's company this past year. We're looking forward to launching many new products." Candy rested her chin in her hand and said nonchalantly, "Hayes Enterprises always follows a fair and impartial selection process. It's good that you have so much confidence in your products, Mr. Vance." Vance Foods was on the brink of bankruptcy. They had no reason to be confident. Otherwise, Leo wouldn't have given up his life as a rich kid to come all the way to Chicago to host a local TV show. Leo's face was a pale, sickly color. He looked at me helplessly. "Brother, the company is partly yours too." Mr. Vance Sr. quickly jumped in. "Sonny, your brother's right. When you have a moment, you should come by the office and we can get the transfer paperwork sorted out." I just smiled. "There's no need for that, Mr. Vance. After all this scheming, you should probably just leave it all to your son." My father was so enraged, he broke into a violent coughing fit. Laura's eyes bulged with fury. "Sonny Miller," she shrieked. "Your father offered you half the company, and I didn't say a word. And now you're acting all high and mighty? What have you ever done for this company?" "So," I said coldly, "you sent Leo to seduce Candy. 1, to save the company, and 2, to make him the CEO's husband. Killing 2 birds with 1 stone? How clever." Leo tried to defend himself. "Brother, you've got it all wrong. Why are you apologizing?" Laura screeched at him. "It's obvious he and Candy set a trap for you, and then tossed you aside once you took the bait." Laura hadn't changed a bit in 20 years, still twisting the facts, throwing a tantrum whether she was right or wrong. It was a brilliant move, really. Any outsider would think Candy was the heartless one who used and abandoned poor, innocent Leo, and that I had helped her do it. Before I could say a word, Candy slammed her hand on the table and shot to her feet. "Mrs. Vance, I suggest you choose your next words very carefully. Or do you want me to take the iMessages where Leo begged me for help and broadcast them on national television so everyone can see the truth?" Candy held up her phone, done with protecting Leo's reputation. "You were being harassed by that woman, and you were too scared to tell her off. You begged me to play along at that poker game, to put on a show for Chloe. Have you forgotten all that, Mr. Vance?" I looked at Leo thoughtfully. He was more cunning than I'd given him credit for, planning every single move. The truth is, I had never even asked Candy about that poker video. It had all been orchestrated by Leo himself. I let out a cold laugh. "You weren't afraid of Chloe. That was just an excuse to get close to Candy and drive a wedge between us. That was the real plan, wasn't it, Leo?" Leo's face was flushed with anger and embarrassment. He looked lost, but he still glanced at Candy with a sliver of hope in his eyes. He really couldn't accept defeat. Candy turned to me. "Sonny, I wasn't thinking clearly. If he had just told me he was your brother, Chloe wouldn't have dared to lay a finger on him." Laura was speechless, her pride completely shattered. My father had lost all face, his own turning a deep, purplish red. He pointed a trembling finger at Laura. "You wretched woman, it's one thing for you to be trash, but you raised our son to be the same." Before he could finish his sentence, his eyes rolled back in his head, and he collapsed. Laura and Leo rushed to catch him. The scene descended into chaos. I did them the favor of calling an ambulance, then walked out with Candy. We didn't get in a car. We just walked. After a long time, my mind finally settled, and I turned to Candy. What happened? You don't want me to reconcile with my family anymore? She looked at me with a helpless, fond expression. No, I see them clearly now. That entire family, there's not a good one among them. They don't deserve you, she said. Sonny, I'm so sorry. Candy and I still had no plans to get back together. I was living my life, free and unattached. And Candy, too, seemed to be growing more comfortable with the new reality. Someone once joked that if she wasn't careful, she'd end up working for me for the rest of her life. Her reply was simple: I'd be happy to.